Hey YouTubers, Red Razor 56 here today with a short video on fire suppression systems. This happens to be a Polaris razor in '09. This particular video really would apply to any off-road machine. We're not going to talk about bulldozers and backhoes and all that stuff today. This is about our Polaris razors. And recently a big topic has come up with fires. Most of them are in the desert. I'm not going to speculate what's going on. Something's wrong. The need to put the fire out is the biggest problem, biggest issue at this time. Going to try to make it as short as I can, but I got to include a lot of things. Let's talk money. I know a lot of guys are talking about putting in a drag racing style automatic fire suppression system with bottles and plumbing, nozzles, hoses, guarded switches. That take a concentrated effort to deploy the fire bottle system, massive push button on the dashboard. But remember, a lot of that stuff is installed and there's one guy in the car, and that's the owner, the driver. He's responsible for it. Our razors are sometimes driven by friends and family. The kiddies are up front and they decide to push that big red button on the dashboard and you blow a fire suppression system out all over a perfectly good motor, and now you really got a problem on your hands. Generally, those fire control buttons are located in areas that have access only to qualified people. So the razor really doesn't fit that realm just because of the variety of people we're going to have out there on the trail. Also hear a lot of talk about an integrated pull lever that kills the engine and deploys the fire suppression system all at one time. Okay, could be a good thing, but correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the ignition key on the razor shut the engine off and shut off the electric fuel pump, and your engine's now off and your fuel's stopped pumping? Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I see that coming up here all of a sudden on some of these topics on the forums. But anyway, let me get to what I have done here. Some of this has to do with budget. Case in point, we are in line in a winter storm warning today, or starting tomorrow, for a repeat of another ice storm like we had in 2009, where the power was off for I think around 21 counties in 2 states, and some people were without power for 3 weeks. What was one of the first things that happened as a result of that? Anybody with a big checkbook went out and had a big whole house generator installed, running on natural gas or propane, something like that, so their family wouldn't be without. But not everybody has that luxury to spend that kind of money. Maybe you rent the house and you can't put that in, or you live in an apartment, or just whatever your living facilities are at the time. You just don't want to spend the money, you don't have the money, but yet you still want backup power. So what do? Buy a backup generator. Does it do the same thing? Yeah. Is it quite as nice? No. Does it require some babysitting? Yes. Okay. An onboard fire suppression system is probably going to use some sort of a foam agent. They need babysitting. They need to be inspected on a regular basis. The cylinders, the cartridges need to be pressure tested at a local fire extinguisher repair or service center. Not every town has one. Our town, we're lucky enough, we have one of the best guys out there. He's a terrific guy. He does fire extinguishers all the time for us. I was a couple of decades in the fire department. Want to qualify myself for why I'm doing this video. Also had fire alarm. I have my own fire alarm system company, 16 years. So I know a whole bunch about the industry, and I also know a whole bunch about putting out fires. If you don't have a budget that is going to allow you to put a plumbed in system, they're expensive. You need to know what you're doing. $500 is probably what it's going to wind up costing you. Okay, first thing everybody's going to say is, oh, you can't put a price on life. I agree with that. But look what I did on my razor 4 years ago. Thanksgiving 4 years ago is when I bought my razor. And when I brought it into my shop, and after I got over the joy of looking at it and what in the world was this thing I just bought, I must be out of my mind, the very first thing that went through my mind was, I installed a fire extinguisher on it. There it is. There's the old original fire extinguisher. Labels beat up on it because it wasn't on every ride except for the first 2 times around the block. Got into a cold spell, and the first thing I did was go grab a new fire extinguisher off the shelf and install it on the right front kick panel. But then we put a stereo in. I put 6x9 kick panel speakers up there and had to move the fire extinguisher. So the Polaris RZR happens to have that crossbar behind the seats. I am not familiar with every RZR that's ever been made. I've ridden in just about all of them, but I know the RZR S of this particular year had those bars that came down here and they came back, you know, somewhere near the rear bumper or something for added support. But I do believe that every RZR has that particular crossbar there. Okay, so you have a Can-Am Commander or a Maverick or a Arctic Cat Wildcat or Yamaha Rhino. Find a place to put this thing. Would it be nice to have it in easy reach where you could grab it from the operator seat? Yeah, it sure would be. And I happen to have this fire extinguisher rotated a little bit for filming purposes, but the way I normally have it, I can reach up there and pull that red pin and get my hands on the fire extinguisher. I can break it loose, and you do not have to manually undo this connection right here. You can yank that fire extinguisher and it'll come out of there. These particular plastic ones are designed for an absolute novice to get their hands on. So if you don't know how to work this or you don't have the strength, you just yank the fire extinguisher and it'll pop loose. It'll come out of there. Take my word for it. Either way, a plumbed-in fire extinguisher is great for the machine that it's on, but it has absolutely no value for your buddy that you're riding with and he has developed a fire and he doesn't have a fire extinguisher. Your plumbed-in system, you can't just undo one of the cartridges and discharge it like a regular fire extinguisher. So that's a little food for thought right there. Now, you could have an onboard fire extinguisher and also a portable. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with having way too many fire extinguishers. The best fire extinguisher you put on your machine is the first one. Anything after that is a bonus. You're the fire department. We all ride rural. Not very many of us ride and parade up and down in front of City Hall where the fire trucks are parked. So you're going to be the first line of defense to put that fire out. And truth be told, by the time the fire department ever does get there, if they can ever find you, your machine is going to be down to a chassis and an engine block. That's all there is to it. So concentrate on putting the fire out yourself. $25 to $30 for a fire extinguisher. I have used, and this is for demonstration purposes only. Heretofore, I've only had my fire extinguisher in portable mode. I haven't given it the thought of this thing being upside down and trapped and all that stuff because our riding style doesn't lend to that. We're more 10, 15 mile an hour trail people. We're conscious of our surroundings at all times. If I smell something, when the full windshield is on, creates that negative pressure in the cab, I get a little exhaust smell in there. We were out riding yesterday, first time with the full windshield on this year. And my wife turns and looks at me and says, "What's that smell?" And I said, "That's the exhaust coming into the cab with us." She finds a wide spot in the trail about 10 feet ahead, reaches up and turns the machine off, throws it in park and sets the parking brake and gets out and jumps out. And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, I just want to make sure this thing isn't on fire." Never kid yourself that something isn't wrong or is wrong. You know, when you see something or you smell something that's not right, get after it and find out what's going on. Anyway, the fire extinguisher setup that I have here today, if a guy wants to do his own inexpensive plumbing, get your $25 fire extinguisher. I've got 3 or 4 of them here in the shop, and apparently they all have this discharge nozzle that's right here that's about the same diameter on every one of them. Doesn't matter if it's an Ansel or a Kitty or whatever it is. But I found that a piece of 5/8 heater hose, automotive style heater hose, like everybody has under the hood of their car or their truck, a piece of 5/8 heater hose about 4 feet long, a worm clamp. This will press onto the end of this nozzle right here. This goes right on. If you tighten this down about 3.5 complete turns, that thing will now stay on there in the event that you pulled this pin and went through the discharge procedure. That hose I have going down, and I have it, and this is something I just using stuff that's laying around the shop today, I can angle that hose with no effort and aim it right on top of the fuel delivery system to this 800 series engine. I totally understand that the 900 and the 1000 is a completely different setup, but all I'm using there is an existing lock and ride hole. That's where that hose is going in here. That's one of the lock and ride mounts, and that 5/8 diameter hose is like 1.125 inches on the OD, and it drops right down in that hole. I didn't have to saw it, file it, anything. It drops down there, and if you get that hose turned the right direction, you can put another one of those worm gear clamps on there, and that'll prevent the hose from backing itself out of the bed, and now there's your hose in place. If your buddy is on fire, or your fire has occurred on a location other than the fuel delivery system on your RZR, with no tools required, you can reach up here and yank this hose and pull that off, and I've got my fire extinguisher in my hand and I'm ready to go put out a fire. Again, you're the fire department. In the conditions we ride, in the locations we ride, there's nobody else out there. You're the only guy, you're running the show, and you better do a good job of it. Guys that are on a budget, you can spend somewhere between $25 and $35 and you can have a onboard fire extinguisher today. Guys that have the money to go out and put in a full plumb system, like a whole house generator, I think that's a fantastic idea, but again, they need babysitting. They need to have pressure tests done on the cylinders. These particular inexpensive fire extinguishers, about every 2 years, about 3 times a year, take it off and turn it upside down and beat the bottom of it with a plastic screwdriver handle in case the powder has got caked up in the bottom of the thing. That'll break the powder loose right there. That's a standard procedure for a fire extinguisher guy. I'm not making that up. So 2 or 3 times a year, you do that to your fire extinguisher and make sure the powder isn't all caked on the bottom right there. And when you look at the gauge or you put your date on there with a Sharpie marker that you installed that thing in January of 2010, come 2 years down the road, go buy a new fire extinguisher, undo the old one, plug the new one in, you're back in business again. Bad breath is better than no breath at all. Again, my point is, for guys on a budget, if you want to put in an inexpensive fire extinguisher system and have it ready for your next ride, you can have it done in about 2 hours. Also, look online at all the different fire extinguisher brackets that our fantastic vendors have. They got billet aluminum. They've got some really cool stuff with obvious pull pins that you can pull with a gloved hand and get your fire extinguisher off and ready to deploy to the fire area. Don't be afraid to spend $35 and have a fire extinguisher today. And for the guys that are going to put in a plumb system, I expect to see some videos to see how it worked out for you. Red RZR 56 saying, live to ride another day.